I'm standing in the middle of my parents' anniversary party, surrounded by 50 of their closest friends, when the hotel manager walks up to me and says, "Congratulations on owning the building, Miss Chen." The entire room goes silent. My mother, who had just spent the evening telling everyone I wasn't wife material, turns the color of fresh snow. My brother David nearly chokes on his champagne. His girlfriend Sophia, who my mom had been treating like the daughter she actually wanted, just stares at me with her mouth open. You see, for 28 years, I've been Maya Chen, the family disappointment, the daughter who chose marketing over medicine, who couldn't keep a boyfriend, who apparently lacked the basic qualities that make a woman worthy of marriage, according to my mother, Patricia. She's 54, a former real estate agent who gave up her career to focus on what she calls building a proper family legacy. My dad, Robert, he's 56 and owns 3 successful restaurants in downtown, but he's always been the type to let mom handle the family dynamics while he handles the business. Then there's my younger brother, David. He's 25 and works at Goldman Sachs, which in my mother's eyes makes him the golden child who can do no wrong. 6 months ago, he started dating Sophia Martinez, this brilliant 24-year-old law student from NYU. She's got this effortless confidence, speaks 3 languages, and somehow manages to look like she stepped out of a magazine even after 12-hour study sessions. The moment my mother met her, it was like she'd found her replacement daughter. But here's what none of them knew. While they were all focused on my failures, I was quietly building something incredible. For 6 years, I've been investing every spare dollar from my marketing job into real estate. Not flashy properties, not anything that would draw attention. Solid investments that generated steady returns. I used a business entity and kept everything under the radar. Because every time I'd tried to share my small wins with my family, they'd get brushed aside or turned into suggestions about what I should be doing differently. 3 months ago, my investment group made the biggest purchase yet. We acquired a portfolio of luxury properties across the city, including the Grand Meridian Hotel, the same Grand Meridian Hotel where my parents decided to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary, the same hotel where my mother was about to learn that her disappointing daughter actually owned the building they were celebrating in. I had no intention of revealing this tonight. I came to this party planning to smile through whatever criticism came my way, toast my parents' marriage, and go home to my quiet life. But sometimes the universe has other plans. Sometimes your mother pushes you too far in front of too many people, and sometimes a hotel manager decides to personally thank the property owner for choosing to host such a special event at their establishment. Let me paint you a picture of what my life looked like leading up to this moment. For the past 3 years, every family gathering has felt like a performance review, where I'm constantly failing. My mother, Patricia, has this way of making observations that sound caring but cut deep. "Maya, honey, maybe if you tried a little harder with your appearance," she'd say, while straightening my collar in front of relatives. "Sophia always looks so polished, doesn't she, David?" The comparison started the day David brought Sophia home for Sunday dinner. I watched my mother's eyes light up in a way they never had for me. Here was this poised young woman who talked about her law school plans with passion, who complimented my mother's cooking with genuine enthusiasm, who somehow made even casual conversation sound sophisticated. Within weeks, Patricia was asking Sophia for advice on everything from wine selections to interior decorating. "Sophia has such refined taste," my mother would gush to anyone who'd listen. "She suggested we switch to those beautiful linen napkins instead of paper ones. Maya, you should really ask her for some tips on entertaining." Meanwhile, I was the daughter who chose marketing over the medical career my parents had envisioned. The one who worked for a mid-sized agency instead of climbing some impressive corporate ladder. The one who had just gone through a messy breakup with Jake, my boyfriend of 2 years, which gave my mother endless ammunition for her theories about my character flaws. "I just don't understand why you can't commit to anything," she'd said over coffee last month, stirring her latte with more force than necessary. "Look at Sophia. She knows exactly what she wants and goes after it. Law school, career goals. She even has a 5-year plan. That's the kind of determination that builds a strong marriage." I remember sitting there holding my cup so tightly I thought it might crack, wanting to tell her about my own 5-year plan, the one that involved carefully researched investments, calculated risks, and slow but steady wealth building. But every time I'd tried to share anything about my financial goals, they were dismissed as playing with money or risky hobbies that nice girls shouldn't worry about. What my mother didn't know was that I had been committing to something for 6 years. Every month, without fail, I took 25% of my paycheck and invested it. While she was criticizing my lack of ambition, I was researching properties, analyzing market trends, attending investor meetups, and building relationships with people who saw potential in my ideas. I kept detailed spreadsheets, tracked every return, reinvested every profit. The irony wasn't lost on me that my mother, the former real estate agent, had no idea her daughter was becoming quite successful in property investment. But the few times I'd mentioned my growing portfolio, she'd change the subject or offer unsolicited advice about how I should be saving for a wedding instead. So when my parents announced they were celebrating their 30th anniversary at the Grand Meridian Hotel, I bit my tongue about owning the place. This was their night, not mine. Patricia had spent weeks planning every detail from the ivory and gold floral arrangements to the carefully curated guest list that included every important person in their social circle. She'd even asked Sophia to give a speech about what real love looks like in today's world, which felt like another subtle dig at my recent relationship failure. When she told me about it, she said, "Sophia has such a beautiful way of expressing herself. I thought it would be inspiring for everyone to hear from someone who really understands commitment." The Grand Meridian is this stunning historic hotel downtown, the kind of place that makes you feel like you're stepping into old Hollywood glamour. Crystal chandeliers hang from 20-foot ceilings, marble floors gleam under warm lighting, and every surface seems to whisper stories of elegant celebrations from decades past. It's exactly the kind of venue my mother would choose to showcase her family's success to their social circle. As I got ready that evening, standing in front of my bedroom mirror adjusting my black cocktail dress, I gave myself a pep talk. I planned to smile through whatever comments came my way, give a brief but heartfelt toast to my parents' marriage, and slip out early to avoid the inevitable post-party analysis of everything I'd done wrong. I was exhausted from being the family disappointment, but I hadn't figured out how to change the narrative without causing drama that would overshadow their special night. I arrived at the hotel with my game face on, determined to keep my mouth shut and get through the evening without incident. As I walked through those massive oak doors into the ballroom, I could see 50 of my parents' closest friends and business associates already mingling, champagne glasses in hand, everyone dressed to impress. These were people who had watched me grow up, who had heard every story about my struggles and setbacks, who probably felt sorry for my parents for having such an underachieving daughter. What I didn't expect was for the universe to flip the script completely. The moment I walked into that ballroom, I should have known it was going to be a long night. Patricia had arranged the seating chart like a royal wedding, with clear hierarchy on display for everyone to see. Sophia was seated in the place of honor right next to my mother, while I was banished to table 6 with my great-aunt Helen and some family friends I barely knew. "Maya, darling, you look lovely," my mother said when she greeted me, but her eyes were already scanning my outfit for flaws. "Though I do wish you'd worn something with a little more color. Sophia chose this gorgeous emerald dress that just makes her glow, doesn't it?" I looked over at Sophia, who did indeed look stunning in a floor-length emerald gown that complemented her dark hair perfectly, and forced a smile. "She looks beautiful, Mom." "She really does. You know, she's been helping me plan this whole evening. Such good taste and so organized. I keep telling David he'd better put a ring on that finger before someone else snatches her up." The dinner started pleasantly enough. My father gave a heartfelt speech about 30 years of marriage, talking about partnership and growth and the joy of building a life together. Everyone raised their glasses, and for a moment, I thought maybe this evening would go smoothly after all. But as the courses came and went, the comments kept coming. When the conversation at the head table turned to careers, I could hear my mother's voice carrying across the room as she highlighted Sophia's law school achievements. "She's already been offered internships at 2 top firms," Patricia announced proudly. "Such drive and ambition." Then, almost as an afterthought, she glanced in my direction and added, "Maya does some marketing work for a small company. It keeps her busy." I felt my cheeks burn as several family friends nodded politely, their expressions suggesting they felt sorry for my parents. Mrs. Henderson, who'd known me since I was 5, gave me one of those sympathetic smiles that made me want to disappear under the table. The real breaking point came during the toast portion of the evening. I had prepared something meaningful about my parents' relationship, about watching them build their life together, and the lessons they'd taught me about love and commitment. I stood up, glass in hand, my heart pounding but determined to say something genuine and heartfelt. Mom and Dad, 30 years ago, you made a promise to each other, and watching you keep that promise has taught me so much about what real partnership looks like. You've shown me that love isn't just about the big romantic gestures. It's about choosing each other every single day, supporting each other's dreams, and building something beautiful together. I was getting into my rhythm, feeling emotional but confident, when Patricia's voice cut through the room like a knife. Thank you, dear, but let's hear from Sophia now. She has such a way with words, and I know she's prepared something really special for us. The room fell silent. I stood there, glass still raised, my toast unfinished, feeling like I'd been slapped in front of 50 people. David looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, but he didn't say anything. My father gave me an apologetic look but remained silent. Sophia herself looked mortified, shaking her head slightly and mouthing, "I'm sorry," in my direction. But my mother was already gesturing for Sophia to stand, beaming with pride as if she'd just introduced her real daughter to the room. I sat down, my face burning with humiliation, and watched as Sophia gave a beautiful, articulate speech about lasting love and commitment. She was gracious and eloquent, and under any other circumstances, I would have genuinely appreciated her words. But all I could think about was how easily my mother had dismissed me in front of everyone who mattered to our family. The evening continued to deteriorate. During the main course, I overheard Patricia telling the Johnsons, family friends who'd known me since childhood, "I just worry about Maya sometimes. She's already 28 and can't seem to settle down with anyone. Some girls just have that natural instinct for relationships, and others struggle with it." Mrs. Johnson glanced over at me with pity. "Well, I'm sure she'll find her way eventually." "I hope so," Patricia sighed dramatically. "I keep telling her to look at how Sophia carries herself, how she supports David's career, how she thinks about their future together. That's what being wife material looks like." That phrase hit me like a physical blow, wife material, as if there was some checklist of qualities that made a woman worthy of love and commitment, and I was failing every single item on it. I excused myself to the bathroom, fighting back tears of frustration and embarrassment. As I stood in the elegant marble restroom, staring at my reflection and trying to compose myself, I made a decision. I couldn't take another minute of this public humiliation. I was going to leave quietly, go home, and figure out how to have a serious conversation with my family when emotions weren't running so high. But as I walked back through the hotel lobby toward the exit, the universe had other plans. I couldn't stay in that ballroom for another second. The humiliation was suffocating, and every sympathetic look from family friends made it worse. I grabbed my purse and headed for the exit, planning to text my parents later with some excuse about not feeling well. At least that way I could preserve what little dignity I had left. As I walked through the elegant lobby, my heels clicking against the marble floor, I tried to process what had just happened. My own mother had cut me off mid-toast to highlight someone else's supposed superiority, in front of 50 people who had watched me grow up. The worst part wasn't even the public embarrassment. It was the realization that this was how Patricia truly saw me. Not as someone struggling to find my place, but as someone fundamentally lacking in the qualities that mattered. I approached the valet stand to get my parking validated, fishing through my purse for my ticket and credit card. The young attendant smiled politely as I handed over my information. But when he ran my card through the system, his expression changed to one of confusion. "I'm sorry, miss, but there seems to be an issue. Let me call my manager." My stomach dropped. This was exactly the kind of thing that would somehow make its way back to my mother. Another story about Maya's financial irresponsibility to add to her collection. I could already hear her telling people, poor Maya couldn't even pay for parking at our anniversary dinner. Marcus Rodriguez, the hotel manager, approached with a concerned expression. He was a distinguished man in his 50s, wearing an impeccably tailored suit and the kind of professional demeanor that made expensive hotels run smoothly. I braced myself for the embarrassment of having my card declined in front of hotel staff. "Miss Chen," he said, and I immediately assumed he was about to deliver bad news about my payment. "I need to apologize. There was an issue with your card when you dined with us last month, and I wanted to personally ensure there were no problems tonight." I remembered that dinner. I'd taken a potential client to the Grand Meridian's restaurant trying to close a deal for my marketing firm. The card reader had glitched, and I'd ended up paying cash while they sorted out the technical issue. It was embarrassing then, but I'd forgotten all about it. "However," Marcus continued, his tone shifting to something more formal, "I'm showing in our system that you're listed as the primary owner of this property. I wanted to personally apologize for any inconvenience and ensure that everything has been perfect for your family's celebration tonight." The words hit me like a freight train. Primary owner. In that moment, I realized what had happened. 3 months ago, when my investment group acquired the portfolio of luxury properties, I'd been so focused on the financial details that I hadn't fully processed the personal implications. The Grand Meridian Hotel, where my family was celebrating, where my mother had just spent the evening treating me like a charity case, was mine. Well, technically, it belonged to Chen Property Holdings, LLC, the investment entity I'd created to keep my business dealings private. But I was the majority stakeholder, the decision maker, the one whose signature was on all the major contracts. I owned the building where my parents were toasting their anniversary, where 50 of their friends had just witnessed my public humiliation. Marcus was still talking, explaining something about VIP services and wanting to ensure the Chen family received the finest treatment, but I could barely process his words. My mind was racing through the implications of this moment. For 6 years, I'd kept my growing success quiet, partly out of habit and partly because my family had never shown genuine interest in my achievements. But standing there in the lobby of my own hotel, having just been dismissed and humiliated by my mother in front of everyone who mattered to our family, something shifted inside me. I was tired of hiding. Tired of being treated like the family disappointment when I'd actually been building something incredible. Tired of watching my mother praise someone else's ambition while completely ignoring mine. "Marcus," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "thank you for bringing this to my attention. Actually, would you mind doing me a favor?" He nodded immediately, clearly eager to please the property owner. "Would you mind coming with me back to the ballroom? I think it's time my family learned a few things about what I've been doing with my life." As we walked back toward the celebration, I could feel my heart pounding, but for the first time all evening, it wasn't from humiliation or anxiety. It was from anticipation. My mother had spent years telling everyone I wasn't wife material, that I lacked ambition, that I couldn't commit to anything meaningful. She was about to learn just how wrong she'd been about her daughter. Walking back into that ballroom with Marcus felt like stepping into a completely different reality. The same crystal chandeliers cast the same warm light, the same people sat at the same tables, but everything had changed because I had changed. I wasn't sneaking back to my assigned seat at table 6. I was walking in as the owner of the building, and Marcus was about to make sure everyone knew it. The dinner was winding down, with guests enjoying dessert and after-dinner drinks. My mother was holding court at the head table, gesturing animatedly as she told some story to a captivated audience. Sophia sat beside her, looking elegant and engaged, while David nodded along to whatever wisdom Patricia was sharing. My father was deep in conversation with his business partner about restaurant operations. Marcus approached the microphone that had been set up for the evening's speeches. He tapped it gently, and the familiar feedback sound caused conversations to die down as 50 faces turned toward him expectantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all enjoying this wonderful celebration of Robert and Patricia Chen's 30th wedding anniversary. As the general manager of the Grand Meridian Hotel, it's always an honor to host such special occasions." I stood near the back of the room, my pulse racing as I watched my family's faces. They looked mildly curious, but mostly just polite, probably expecting some standard hotel manager pleasantries about their hospitality. "However, tonight is particularly special for us here at the Grand Meridian," Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly across the room. "We have the distinct pleasure of hosting an event for one of our property owners. Miss Maya Chen, would you please join me?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could see confusion ripple across the room as people processed what they'd just heard. Property owner, Maya Chen. Their brains were trying to make sense of information that didn't fit their understanding of reality. I walked toward the front of the room, my heels clicking against the marble floor, feeling 50 pairs of eyes tracking my movement. At the head table, my mother's face had gone completely white. Her confident smile had frozen into something that looked more like a grimace. David had dropped his dessert fork and it clinked against his plate in the silence. Sophia's eyes were wide with surprise, but I caught something that looked like respect in her expression. "Miss Chen," Marcus said as I reached the microphone, "on behalf of our entire staff, thank you for choosing to host your family's special celebration here at your property. The Grand Meridian Hotel is honored to serve the Chen family tonight." The room erupted in murmurs and whispered conversations as people tried to process this revelation. I could hear fragments of amazed conversations. Did he say she owns this place? Maya Chen? But she's just... I took the microphone from Marcus, my hands steadier than I'd expected them to be. Looking out at the sea of faces, I could see everything from shock to confusion, to what looked like newfound respect. But my eyes were drawn to my family's table, where the dynamics had shifted completely in the span of 30 seconds. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate my parents' incredible marriage. 30 years of partnership is truly something to honor." I paused, looking directly at my mother, whose mouth was slightly open as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find words. I also want to address something that's been weighing on my heart tonight. For the past several years, I've felt like I haven't measured up to the standards of success and achievement that matter to this family. I've been told, both directly and indirectly, that I lack ambition, that I can't commit to anything meaningful, that I'm not the kind of woman who builds a stable future. Patricia's face was cycling through multiple emotions: shock, embarrassment, and what looked like the beginning of understanding. "What you didn't know is that for the past 6 years, I've been building something. Not just a career, but a real estate investment portfolio that now includes several properties across the city. 3 months ago, my investment group acquired this hotel, along with 4 other luxury properties. I kept it quiet because every time I tried to share my successes with this family, they were dismissed as unimportant or risky." The room was completely silent now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. "I love you all, and I especially love you, Mom and Dad. But I need you to understand something. I am ambitious. I do commit to things that matter. And despite what I was told earlier tonight, I am absolutely wife material, business owner material, and daughter material. I just needed you to see me clearly enough to recognize it." I handed the microphone back to Marcus and looked at my family, waiting for their response to this new reality. The silence in that ballroom felt like it lasted forever, but it was probably only 10 seconds before the room exploded into conversation. 50 guests who had known me as the family disappointment were suddenly seeing me as a successful business owner, and the cognitive dissonance was almost visible on their faces. My father was the first to react. He stood up from the head table, his expression moving from shock to something that looked like pride mixed with regret. He walked over to me and without saying a word pulled me into a tight hug. "Maya, I had no idea," he whispered in my ear. "I am so proud of you and so sorry we didn't know how to listen." David was next, practically stumbling over chairs to reach me. "Holy shit, Maya," he said, then caught himself and glanced around at the formal crowd. "I mean, wow, you own this place? How did we not know? This is incredible." But the person I was watching was my mother. Patricia sat frozen at the head table, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. The woman who had spent the evening confidently directing conversations and making pronouncements about my character looked smaller somehow, like she was processing a fundamental shift in her understanding of reality. Sophia approached me while my father and brother were still processing their shock. "Maya, I owe you an apology," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "I felt uncomfortable with some of the comparisons your mother has made between us, but I didn't know how to address it without seeming ungrateful for her kindness. What you've accomplished is remarkable, and the way you've handled tonight shows incredible grace." I looked at her, this woman I'd been resenting for months, and realized she'd been as uncomfortable with the situation as I had been. "Sophia, you don't need to apologize for anything. You've been nothing but kind to me, and you deserve every bit of praise you've received. I was just tired of feeling invisible in my own family." The guests gradually approached me throughout the evening, and it was fascinating to watch how their treatment of me changed in real time. Mrs. Henderson, who had given me pitying looks earlier, now wanted to discuss investment strategies. Mr. Johnson asked if I had any advice for his son, who was interested in real estate. People who had dismissed me as Patricia's underachieving daughter suddenly saw me as someone worth knowing. But the most important conversation happened about an hour later, when my mother finally found the courage to approach me. I was standing by the windows overlooking the city, taking a moment to process everything that had happened, when I felt her presence beside me. "Maya," she said, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you a complete change in how I see and treat you." I turned to look at her, and for the first time in years, I saw vulnerability in her eyes instead of judgment. "I spent so much time focusing on what I thought you should be that I completely missed seeing who you actually are," she continued. "Watching Sophia's reaction to your success tonight made me realize something terrible. She immediately recognized and respected your achievements, while I, your own mother, have been blind to them for years." Patricia's voice was shaking now. "I called you ambitious and committed, and you've been proving both of those things for 6 years, while I criticized you for not being enough. I turned you into my disappointment when you were actually my success story." I felt years of hurt and frustration starting to dissolve, not because everything was suddenly fixed, but because she finally saw me clearly. "Mom, I love you, but I need things to change. I need you to trust that I know how to run my own life, even if it doesn't look like the life you planned for me. I need you to stop comparing me to other people and start seeing my actual accomplishments. And I need you to understand that there isn't just one way to be successful or worthy." She nodded, and tears in her eyes. "I understand. And Maya, I need you to know that you are wife material and business material, and any other kind of material you want to be. I was wrong, and I'm going to spend as long as it takes proving that I can be the mother you deserve." As the evening wound down, I realized that hiding my success hadn't protected me from criticism. It had just made the criticism uninformed and unfair. By keeping my achievements private, I had allowed my family to create a narrative about me that was completely false. Standing in my own hotel, surrounded by people who finally saw me clearly, I understood that the validation I'd been seeking from my family was secondary to the validation I needed to give myself. I'd built something incredible, and I deserved to own that success proudly. The best part wasn't proving them wrong, it was finally being seen for who I truly was. So there you have it. That's how I went from being the family disappointment to owning the building where my mother finally learned to see me clearly. It's been 6 months since that anniversary dinner, and our family dynamic has completely transformed. My mother now asks about my business ventures with genuine interest, and she's stopped making comparisons between me and other people. David and I have gotten closer as he's started asking for investment advice, and Sophia has become one of my closest friends. My parents celebrated their anniversary, but I got something even better that night. I got my family back, and more importantly, I got the confidence to stop hiding my light under a bushel. Sometimes the people who love you most can't see your worth until you're brave enough to show it to them directly. The Grand Meridian Hotel is thriving under my ownership, by the way. We've expanded our event services, and I've been able to implement some innovative marketing strategies that have increased bookings by 40%. Turns out, all those years of just doing marketing actually taught me quite a bit about running a successful business. If you're someone who feels invisible in your own family, or if people in your life are treating you like you're not enough, I want you to know that their inability to see your worth doesn't diminish your value. Sometimes you have to stop waiting for permission to shine and just turn on your own lights. Your success doesn't need anyone else's approval to be real, but it does need your own courage to be visible. If this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Have you ever had a moment where you had to show your family who you really were? Drop your story in the comments below because I love reading about people who refuse to stay small. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I share stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and those life-changing moments that flip everything upside down. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that might just change how you see your own life. Remember, you don't need anyone else's permission to be extraordinary. You just need the courage to stop hiding it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.